Hi, everyone. Thank you for making it out to OzTREKK's Study Medicine in Australia Admissions 101. Before we start, and while we let a few people trickle in, would love to know if where you're calling in from, where you dialing in from, and yeah, just pop it in the chat so we can see. And we'll be definitely starting in the next minute or so. All right, I'm gonna give it a go, and if there are any students that trickle in later, we can definitely address that. So hi everyone, my name is Ashish Tharoor, and I am a territory manager for OzTREKK. And we are here today to discuss Australian medical schools, the admissions requirements, and everything that you need to know about it. So firstly, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. And yeah, without further ado, would love to get it started. So today we're going to be talking about OzTREKK, why Australia, the degrees and universities that are possible for you, the admissions criterias after you graduate, and as well as getting in touch with us. So I'm joined here today with Amanda, who's a part of our admissions team. And Amanda's actually lived in Australia, so she'd be able to give you some hands-on experiences that she's had over there. So how does OzTREKK help, and what do we do? What makes us important for you? So OzTREKK helps you from start to finish when it comes to considering medical schools or any program in Australia. So we help you determine whether you're eligible to apply, how competitive you are as an applicant. And once we go through that, we're able to actually apply to multiple universities at once for you. So OzTREKK is partnered with 13 universities in Australia, one in New Zealand. And when it comes to medical schools, we have 10 medical schools that we're able to apply to for you, depending on the degree that you are looking for. So we help determine how competitive you are as an applicant. We're able to apply for you multiple applications at once. We're also able to certify transcripts and submit your applications for you to the universities. We're located in Perth, Ontario. So because of that, you don't have to be mailing your transcripts and your official documents all the way to Australia. You're able to actually send them across to us, to our admissions team, and they're able to verify and make sure everything is good to go. We also assess and advocate for each student's needs. So we're making sure that we represent you to the best of our abilities and ensure that everything, all the gray areas, any sort of questions that might arise or issues that might arise from studying abroad, we're able to take care of it and help you throughout the process. Finally, we also help you accept and get ready to go to Australia. So what that means is there are certain processes when it comes to accepting your offer, placing a deposit, what are the financial situations. When it comes to that, our admissions team is able to talk you through the whole process and make sure that you are well aware. And as well as before you're ready to go, we have a pre-departure system where we make sure that you're connected with other Canadians that are about to embark on this journey, as well as making sure that visas are sorted, tickets are booked, housing is sorted, and all the things that you would possibly need. So when it comes to our admissions teams, we have different admissions teams for each program. OzTREKK's medicine team has Amanda, Megan, and Bridget as part of their team. And typically for each program, we have different people that are specialized and experts on the topic. So you can ask them any questions that you have, and you would typically see this specific admission team speaking to you throughout the journey. So you'd see them from start till finish once you reach at Australia. We also at OzTREKK, we help you with understanding licensing. What is the way of coming home once you are registered with us and you have contact with us? We do a lot of online medical licensing presentations, understanding the pathways, telling you about licensing exams, everything that you would need to know about that. We have a ton of information that we can share with you so that you're well aware of everything that's needed. And a lot of the times students do consider when it's coming home to practice, is that possible? We will touch on that a bit later on in this presentation, but this is something that you should know that we have, and we will always be there to answer any questions that you might have. So how does the application process look when it comes to applying to medical schools in Australia through OzTREKK? So one, you connect with OzTREKK, you ask our admissions team about anything that you might have when it comes to considering the programs that we have to offer. And then we find a program that fits best for you. You might be in high school right now, you might be doing your undergraduate degree, depending on this various phases of life that you are at. We're able to determine which would be the best degree and program that fits you. Once you're able to get through that, we're able to apply online for free and get your docs together and get everything submitted. Once that is done, we also make sure that you are well prepared for attending your interview, usually held online, and we will give you all the details in advance so that you're ready for it. Once all of these 4 steps are done, I guess the positive aspects of it starts coming into play. And that is, if you do get an admissions letter, how to accept your offer. We would tell you everything that's needed regarding your deposit or anything else that's possibly needed when it comes to accepting your offer. And finally, the pre-departure and liftoff. You'll receive a ton of information from us when it comes to how do I arrive in Australia, visas, financing, accommodation, in general, getting you in touch with other students that are possibly joining you on this journey so that you're not alone in it. I think it's important to also mention that OzTREKK is a completely free service for US students, as we're partnered with these universities to be able to help you through the process. So anything that you do discuss with us, there is no cost added, and that's something to just keep in mind. This is the beautiful Melbourne, Yarra River, and as you can see, who doesn't want to be at Australia and in the beautiful scenic views that they have. It's important to talk about Australia and find out what is the beauty behind it. And I think something that I always tell students is that it's quite similar to Canada in size, in healthcare, in education, in the legal system. They've got a 23 million diverse population. It's English speaking. It actually has 4 of the most livable cities in the world, an amazing climate. And truly, one of the things that you would consider when going to Australia is the idea that you don't have to be suffering in the snow. You don't have to be suffering in the cold that Canada has. It's a great option to be considering. And the medical schools in specific have prestigious global reputation. And that's something that we will touch on later on as well. Why study in Australia? What is the selling point behind it? And I think one of the aspects that a lot of students start considering, even just looking at medical schools abroad, is due to the limited places at Canadian universities. There is a sense of high competition, high requirements, and in general, not accessible to all students. And that's why students consider looking abroad, and that's why we are here today for you to consider Australia as an option. Australia has prestigious global reputed medical schools, and in general you would see that a lot of the schools are at par with Canadian medical schools, if not better, and you are able to return back to Canada to practice after you finish your degree. That's something that's really important to consider, because at the end of the day, if you are going abroad to consider a medical degree, you would like to know your chances of being able to come back and practice here. Student support, hands-on approach, they are known to be a very engaging degrees where you would have a lot of hands-on experiences while you study there, as well as in general, the universities are known to be very, very supportive in your academic journey, and you would typically see a lot of student support in general being there for you. The last 2 points, I think, are something that a lot of students consider for why they consider Australia, and that is the beautiful climate, the beaches, the cities, the adventurous outdoor lifestyle. We see a lot of students go to Australia and fall in love with the country because of these various reasons. And that is one of the reasons why I'd like to say you should be considering Australia. So this is obviously the beautiful Sydney, and as you can see from all the photos that we've shown today, it's honestly one of the most scenic and beautiful countries to be visiting, and I highly recommend doing it once in your life. So now we're going to touch on the main topic of today, and that's medical schools in Australia. We have OzTREKK is partnered with 10 medical schools, 9 options for students in final semester or with completed degrees, 6 undergraduate options for students applying directly from high school, and 2 undergraduate options for students with partially completed bachelor's degrees. As you can see from the map, they're well spread out across Australia. A bunch of them are all over the areas, and you can see that each of them has unique aspects to it because of the location as well. And that's something to consider when you're looking at Australian medical schools. It's not just about the reputation. It's not just about the idea that they have a big name. A lot of the universities have unique aspects to it because of the geographical location or some sort of research or some unique aspect that I'm sure some students might resonate with. So that's it from me when it comes to just an intro about OzTREKK. How are we going to be helping you in terms of considering Australian medical schools? And I'm going to hand it over to Amanda from our medical admissions team to continue the presentation and talk about the requirements.
Thanks, Ashish. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. So let's talk more in detail about admissions for medicine. Every year we run a lot of reports and we put together stats and data and just information that we can share with everyone on what's happened throughout the year. So we work with students for an entire year, like Ashish said, and we have some stats to show you today. Last year, so it was for the start date, or sorry, the 2022 intake. The number of applications is pretty high. These numbers might surprise you, but we submit well over 2,000 applications. So that's applications, not necessarily students. Each student is typically applying to more than one program. 600 plus offers received. These numbers have grown over the years as well. Previously, we saw about a 504 MCAT as competitive, and I'll share a little bit more about what we're advising this year. And then roughly a 3.0 GPA, 75 to 80 or above is what you want to be aiming for. Anything higher than that's going to put you in an even better position. But if you pop over to our website and you click on the eligibility page, that'll show you some links about competitive stats over the last few intakes, and the new ones will be up in the next couple of weeks as well. I did also want to add to that the last few years, we've sent about 160 to 175-ish students in total to medical programs. So we've got a lot of OzTREKK students in Australia in many different years of their programs. There's a lot of support. You definitely will have friends before you go. And that's a really, I think, a really cool thing about working with OzTREKK. So medical school, Ashish is in control of the slides. Medical school ranking. So they are pretty similar to, Canada's are pretty similar to Australia. You'll see U of T is pretty high up there. McGill, UBC, very similar to Sydney and Melbourne, for example. So you can look at lots of different ranking sites online. This information is pulled from the QS World Rankings. But all of the schools that we work with, all the med programs, all the universities are fully accredited. They allow you all to apply for residency when you finish. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities between the Australian programs and Canadian ones. So like Ashish said, there are 10 medical schools, and in those we work with 9 graduate entry programs. So if you're completing your bachelor's or your master's, 6 undergrad entry options, and then within those 6, there are 2 programs that will allow you to start if you have some college, some university, or even if you have all of your university, you've completed a bachelor's and you're just not ready to sit the MCAT. If you want to look at those 2 programs, those are options as well. All right, so graduate entry medicine, we're going to go over grad entry and then undergrad entry. So to give you an idea of what's required, it actually comes as a little bit of a surprise to a lot of students that I speak with and parents, that the Australian schools are assessing in over 3 different, they're looking at 3 different components. So they're looking at your MCAT, your performance in an interview, and your GPA. References, supplemental forms, there's no essay writing, those sorts of things are not included. So it tends to be pretty straightforward in terms of application documents, and we can give really solid advice on what's competitive because the assessment criteria is it allows us to run reports on MCAT scores, and we have seen thousands of transcripts, so we're pretty good at figuring out students' GPAs and advising on that. So let's talk about GPA first. For the majority of the undergrad med programs, you want to have at least a 70. Some of them are a little bit more competitive, so into the 80s is what you'll need. But in general, if you're between a 70 or 80, you should give it a go and talk to us. And then MCAT wise, a 507 or above is what we are advising is competitive for this year's applicants. That said, you don't necessarily need that. We definitely have students who have well below those scores that are successful each year. It all comes down to also what your GPA is like, how you do in the interview, and then how the university actually performs their assessments, which we'll talk about in a second. But if we look at and there's some prerequisites for 2 of the schools as well. So Monash is looking for a very heavy biomedical undergrad. So you want to have a bachelor's in physiology, biochemistry, genetics, pharmacology, a lot of subjects related to those types of fields. So that's for Monash. For the University of Queensland, they need a systems physiology as well as a cell biology course. So we're happy to talk with you about that. If you have questions or are wondering if you would be meeting those prerequisites, we can definitely look at your transcript and give you some advice. So over to the chart on the right. I feel like I need to slow it down a little bit. I'm probably talking too fast. The chart on the right lists all of the graduate entry universities that we work with. You'll see the minimum MCAT scores there. So depending on the school, they're either looking for a minimum in each section of your MCAT, or they're looking for an overall score. So Deakin University, for example, at the very top there, 125 in each section is required. And then the University of Queensland, for example, wants a 504 overall. So those are the minimums, and you do have to meet the minimums in order for you to be eligible to apply and for us to submit an application. You'll see a few asterisks there beside Melbourne and Sydney. Their minimums are actually lower than what we have posted there, the university minimums. But over the years, we've determined that because of the offers that we get and the success we see and where that minimum MCAT falls for OzTREKK students, we've made just a decision as an organization to only submit 505 or above. We always keep it real. If we don't think you're going to be competitive somewhere, we will definitely tell you, as well as tell you where you should be aiming to apply. But that's what those 2 little asterisks there mean. And then on the far column, you'll see what is competitive. So every year we run reports at the very end of the year. And what's competitive is always higher than what the minimum scores are. And we'll have the new data on our website soon too. So in general, a 507 puts you in a good position, an 80% GPA, and then having those prerequisites for 2 schools as well. I apologize if you can hear my dog. She's jealous that I'm talking with you this evening and not with her. So how the universities assess. So this is It looks like a lot on here on this slide, but I'll give you 2 examples. So each university assesses a little bit different. Normally I like to compare Sydney and Melbourne because they are very different in the way that they assess. So the University of Sydney, for example, they are going to look at your GPA first. And as long as you meet that GPA, you're then ranked on your MCAT. So their minimum GPA is around a 70%. So most students will meet that. That said, because they rank on the MCAT, it does make it quite competitive, and they haven't had an interview as part of their assessment for a number of years, and they won't be this year either. So ranking on the MCAT, that means that we typically see 513 as the lowest score that gets in. So it can be a little bit more of a challenging school to get into currently. And then if we look at Melbourne, for example, once you interview, you're then assessed for an offer based on 25% GPA, 25% MCAT, and then 50% MMI. So let's say you have, a little bit of a lower MCAT, a really strong straight A average, and then you nail your interview. You don't have to get so much hung up on the MCAT if it's a little bit lower, if those other 2 parts of your application are very strong. So I'll give you one, we'll talk about one more here. So Flinders University, their assessments for offer is equally weighted across the 3 components. So this is a conversation that we have with a lot of students. Once we've got their transcript, we know what their MCAT score is. We help you strategize where you should be applying based on this, based on your stats, and also the admissions timelines and how the universities assess whether rounds, rolling admissions, or firm deadlines. We help you with all of that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the undergrad entry program. So primarily these are for students coming straight out of high school, with the exception of James Cook University and Macquarie University, who will accept students with some college and university or even a completed university degree. So minimum GPAs for the undergrad programs, you'll notice they are quite a bit higher than the grad entry programs. So minimum GPA, if you're coming from high school, is about an 86. We see well into the 90s as what's competitive. If you're coming from university and you're wanting to look at JCU and Macquarie, you'll want to have 82 or above, definitely. And then for ISAT, I apologize if you can hear my dog. The competitive ISAT, 2 of the schools require the ISAT, so just 2. And those are Monash and UWA, the University of Western Australia. You'll see that in the chart on the right. The minimums are around a 170 overall score. However, a lot higher is probably going to put you in a more competitive position. So about a 180 or above is what you'll want to be aiming for. In terms of timelines, there is a May, if this is something you're doing this year, you want to book the MCAT, it's recommended that you book it to take it in May. So you want to look into that now. It's the ACER website, ACER, and if you Google ISAT ACER, it'll definitely come up, and they've got a really great website actually that explains it all and what the test is all about. And then for prerequisite subjects, pretty straightforward for all of the schools. Flinders is the only one that doesn't have strict prerequisites, but for the most part, like the majority of students coming from high school already are taking English, chemistry, and math. So those are the main prerequisites for the majority of the programs. And like I said, the competitive GPA is you'll want to have in the 90s. The lowest is around an 88% for Griffith, but talk with us, send us your transcript, send us your predicted grades if you don't have them quite yet, if you're graduating in a couple months, and we're happy to give you some advice on where you should be applying. Okay, so Ashish talked about what the application process looks like and how we help throughout. This is a general application timeline. So because the medical programs start once per year in semester 1, and in Australia, semester 1 is the start of the year, so January, February, we are typically working with students for an entire year. So right now, we've started working with everyone who will be starting medical school January, February 2024. So you start your applications at the beginning of the year. We typically have a big announcement on our social media and on our website. And if you're in our system and in our database, recommend that you get into it so that we can send you an email when it's time for you to apply. Even if it's 2 years down the road for you, we can start a file for you, and that way you'll be notified when it's time to take the first step. So you submit the OzTREKK application. Anywhere from about March to May, we are collecting a lot of documents. Our inbox is bonkers right now with lots of documents, which is a very good thing because starting early and getting your applications in early is always what we recommend to make it as seamless as possible and as stress-free as possible. So right now it's application document collection time, as well as we're starting to submit applications to the universities. So each spring, the universities will officially open their application portals for the upcoming intake. And then as soon as that happens, we can go ahead and start submitting applications. Through May and August, so the summer months with the pineapple on the beach, that's when we will see some outcomes starting to come out, interviews come out, outcomes, so offers. We host lots of webinars through the summer months, medical licensing webinars that Ashish will take you through in a moment. And it's a very exciting time. It's a busy time. There's lots of big application deadlines in the summer, especially in June. But students are starting to know if they've gotten into quite a few places at that time of year. Acceptances, offers, we use the word offers for the letter of offer, and then acceptances in terms of like when a student is accepting an offer. So a lot of that happens late summer into the fall. If you are thinking about, taking a program here in Canada in September, if you apply early enough, you should have some outcomes before then. So you might even know if you're going to Australia well before you'd even need to start in September here. Show us your cards. Tell us what your plans are. If you're applying to the Caribbean, the US, if you're applying to Canada, be an open book with us, because we really want to hear what your path is and what your journey is looking like. And yeah, if staying in Canada, if you get into Harvard, whatever it is, we are generally happy for you. We want you to go to med school somewhere. So yeah, always be real with us and we will keep it real with you. And then, yeah, into the fall is when we do our full pre-departure visas, webinars on accommodation, locations in Australia, flights. We connect you with all of your classmates and other students. And then your feet hit the ground sometimes in December, depending on when you want to go. Maybe if you want to escape the cold, you go a little bit earlier than your program starts. January, February is when classes typically begin.
Perfect. Thank you, Amanda, for that. I'm sure students found that really enlightening and definitely a lot of information to grasp in a little amount of time. So if you have any questions later on as well, please get in touch with medicine@oztrekk.com, and I'll show you the email after as well, and they will be happy to answer any questions that you have. So I'm going to quickly touch on coming home and the idea of returning home to practice. What are your options after you graduate? And we have 4 different options that you can look at. So the 4 different options are, as you can see here, and I'm going to go through each one real quick. So your first option as Australian medical school graduate is you're able to return to Canada. And for that, you would basically be matching for residency in Canada after your graduation. Secondly, you're able to complete your postgraduate training in Australia and then return as a doctor to Canada. So both of these processes while it seems as a very straightforward statement that I've just made, there are a lot of steps that go through it. And while this isn't the place to be talking about it, we do a lot of webinars and different types of sessions for this. We do have one coming up later on in summer, which we would be happy to send you the link for, and you can definitely sit in for that, and we will be breaking down each option for you. But yes, the first option is you're able to return to Canada. You're able to match for residency once you return to Canada. The second option is complete your postgraduate training in Australia. So that essentially means you go through all the processes there, and once you're officially a full doctor, you apply to return back to Canada as a full doctor. The third option seems to be one of the most hot and popular options for Canadian graduates that are going to Australia, and that is to actually stay back in Australia. There are many multiple reasons students consider that and individuals consider that, and that is because of the idea that you're going there for 4 to 5 years, you're going there for a long time, you're able to build relationships there. There's a lot of opportunities that come with being at a certain place at that certain age, which gives you different chances and potential opportunities that you might take on. But yes, you're able to stay in Australia, complete the internship there, match for residency there, and then practice as a doctor there. So we've seen a lot of students consider this option, and it seems to be something that that keeps trending up, and a lot of people consider it. The last option is to go to the US and consider that. So you'd be considering matching for residency in the US and then completing the entire postgraduate training options there. And yeah, considering becoming a doctor within the US, or you could even consider after finishing your postgraduate training in the US and then return to Canada, which we do have seen some graduates. And recently we did do a webinar where we had a panelist who graduated from an Australian medical school, did their residency in the US, and then returned to Canada as a full doctor. Now, all of these options have various steps to it. None of them are easy, and none of them are going to be a very streamlined and straightforward process. They all have various steps to them, which we would be happy to answer. And if you do go on our website, we have broken down a lot of these options that you can read about before any webinar that we do in the future. So that's kind of the end of our presentation for today in terms of requirements, coming back to Canada, and in general, the options of being able to go through OzTREKK and how we are able to help you. But before we go ahead and close this off, we'd love to open the room to Q&A and just answer some questions or any sort of clarifications that you might have about OzTREKK, about medical schools, or about returning to Canada to practice. So any questions at all, just pop them in the chat box and we can discuss them real quick right now. While that is happening, I would love to ask Amanda, if you don't mind touching on your experience in Australia and in general, if do you have anything that you'd love to tell people that are interested?
Sure. So I did not go to Australia for medical school. Sometimes I'm asked if I'm a doctor. No, I'm not. I moved to Australia planning to be there for a year on a working holiday visa. This was quite a while ago, well over 10 years ago. And yeah, I ended up staying for close to 5 years. So Australia, I found, was a very easy country to transition to. A lot of very friendly, hospitable people. The culture is very social. So I had met some people, some Australians, as you do when you're out west in the Rockies, and they connected me with all of their friends, and it was just a very easy country to settle into. So yeah, the healthcare system is very easy to navigate. And yeah, I think for Canadians, it's it's far. It's very far. It's a long journey, especially if you're coming from Ontario and you're flying across Canada and then down. But once you're there, I think the important thing to keep in mind is there is going to be an adjustment period. It's going to be crazy and really exciting. But typically, yeah, it does take, depending on you, and if you've ever been away from home, months. It might take 6 months. It might take a whole year for you to get your feet. But I've talked to a lot of medical students who go down and they're just set on coming home, and that's their ultimate goal. And then, I mean, I had dinner with a bunch of them in Brisbane a few years ago, and they pretty much all said that they were staying. So it is true. A lot of students end up going into it thinking, I'm coming home. They fall in love with the country, the lifestyle, the culture, the coffee. They meet friends, they meet lovers, you name it. They get really comfortable in the healthcare systems there and in the hospitals there, and are able to network. And staying ends up being, I don't want to say easy, but a more comfortable transition into internship and residency years. So I feel like Australia sucks you in. It did for me, and it does for a lot of our students too.
Absolutely. I think that seems to be the trend with a lot of students, and in general, who doesn't want to be in Australia? I think it's a beautiful place to be at. I have seen a few people raise their hands. If possible, would you be able to type out the questions on the chat box so that whenever we send this recording to other students, or in general, if you'd like to see this recording later on, we'd be able to have a transcript of the questions being asked. So I see a few hands up and would really appreciate if you could type out those questions, and we'll definitely get those answered.
You may have to click the little chat icon at the very bottom in order to bring up the box. I'm not sure if it's the same on
Yeah,
their side, but
they should have a chat box, that a webinar chat that they can ask away. Uh, Let me see. So I'm gonna try maybe, I do see a few students here that are trying to raise their hands. Are you able to maybe just pop in a quick message on the chat so that we know that your chat is working?
I know that we had some troubles in January with one of our sessions, so it might be Zoom and in the chat box, and not necessarily the students or us.
Right. Okay. Then maybe, you know what, I'm gonna try and allow someone to speak, and let's see if that works. I've never done this before, so let's see if we can maybe hear it. So Ben Perks, I'm going to start with you to allow you to talk, and let's see if that works.
Hi, yeah, thanks. It says for us that chat is disabled, so if I had to guess, that would be why others aren't texting. Yeah, I'm more than happy to ask my question out loud, but I can let you guys figure out the problem if you want. It's whatever's easiest.
No, Ben, please go ahead and ask that question.
Hi,
Okay,
Ben.
perfect. Hi, nice to meet both of you. Yeah, sorry for all the others who are not able to put in the chat. I guess I got first dibs here. My question was just regarding the process of, say you receive an offer, and since the schools, from my understanding, you might get offers weeks or even months apart from each other. And so how does the down payment process work about like reserving an offer if you're, say, waiting to hear back from other schools? Just wondering if you could touch on that a little bit.
Absolutely. That's a really good question. And it's it's important for us to share this with everyone who's applying this year. So there will be emails, and our next Zoom Q&A session in April will be specifically focused on this. But to give you a general idea, yes, a lot of students will get offers from a number of programs and might actually be waiting for their ideal offer that might come months later. So every year we have students who accept an offer and then decide that it's not right for them, or they want to accept elsewhere, whether it's in Australia or even in North America or Ireland. It is common to accept, or it's not uncommon for a student to accept and then later withdraw because of a change of mind. So we walk you through that process, but essentially what it means is you accept that initial offer, you pay the deposit. If you wish to withdraw, you would forfeit a certain amount of money. So each deposit is different. It can range a lot depending on the school, and each withdrawal penalty is different as well. So that can range anywhere from $2,000 to $20,000. So it really varies, and you want to be reading the fine print in all of our emails and all of the offer letters to make sure you're well aware of that, and definitely ask if you have questions. But more to come for current applicants on the offer topic, definitely.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Ben. I'm going to let Mohammed ask his question next.
Hi. So I had a question. Do you guys also do applications for dental school?
Yes, we definitely do. We have we're essentially able to help you apply to many different professional programs, but in specific, yes, dentistry is possible. We have a bunch of schools that we can help you apply to. And if you visit our website and go under the dentistry program, you can see all the universities and the different types of dentistry degrees they have to offer for you. I'll also pop in a link to you, Mohammed, after this, and so that you have that website link for yourself.
Awesome. Just one more question. So I'm an international student at Western. So when I was like looking at U of T and Schulich School, I saw like there's so little chance that I can get into med school in Canada. So I was wondering if it's the same for Australia too, or do I have the same chance as like Canadian students who want to apply to Australian med schools?
I can answer that one. So a large number of the students that we help every year are similar to you. So you might have a passport that's not Canadian, but you are in Canada, studying in Canada, might be en route to getting PR in Canada. We can help you as long as you're studying or have studied at a North American school, so Canada or in the US. Yeah, you're not disadvantaged whatsoever. We've got plenty of students. There's a pretty good balance between Canadian born and raised and students from other countries who were born and raised elsewhere and who have immigrated here or who've come here specifically to study. So no disadvantage, not a different application process. You're all vying for designated international seats in the medical programs.
Oh, that's awesome. And so let's say if I graduate in 2024 from my bachelor degree and want to get into med school like in Australia right after, do I need to apply, like, do I need to get my application process started in 2024 as well? Like based on the same schedule that you showed?
Yes. So you'll start the process in January, February next year when you're in your final semester.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. It was so
You're
helpful.
welcome.
Thanks, Mohammed. I have potentially tried to get this chat back in working. So if someone could possibly try shooting a message on the everyone chat, that would be great. Perfect, Alex, that was amazing. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry about that. So yes, I would love to get those questions typed out so that we can see them and we can definitely get the ball rolling in terms of questions. So if you have any questions, would love for you to type it out. We'll give it a quick second for you to get that all sorted. So Amanda, we've got a question over here, and it's, are there admission statistics available for undergraduate programs?
Mhm.
The website only shows the graduate ones.
There will be in the next few weeks. We've been working on both the grad entry, and we know that undergrad entry is sought after too. So those will be posted. We'll have just last intake, I think, for now, for the undergrad entry programs, but they're coming.
Perfect. Any other questions? I do see one from Ghislaine. Ghislaine, I know I do see your hand raised. If you have a question at all, please type it out. Or if you can't, let us know. Okay, so my question pertains to how one would go about receiving funding through student loans if they receive an offer. Amanda, I know that at admissions you speak about this more, so I'm
Yes.
going to pass it over to you.
No problem. So I definitely recommend that everyone start thinking about how they're going to fund their studies well before an offer even hits their inbox. The medical programs, tuition-wise, range quite a bit, but on average, 75 to about 80,000 per year. On top of that, you'll want to factor in another roughly like 25 to 30, even 35,000 per year for everything else. So outside of your tuition, you're covering accommodation, transportation, activities, flights home, food, all of that. So it is quite an expensive endeavor. Not sugarcoating that. The main sources of funding that our North American students use is a pretty big bank loan if you're in Canada. So banks like CIBC, RBC, TD, BMO, those are all worth having conversations with early on. The loans typically aren't dispersed until you have an offer and you can prove that you have been accepted into a program. The other source of funding is a provincial loan. So you are able to get access to a provincial loan. Albertans have it the best, they get the most. I think BC is the second highest, and then Ontario is a little bit lower. And then personal savings, family support, and savings throughout the program. When you're on a student visa, you can work casual or part-time. And then when you're on your breaks, you can work full-time. So some students will supplement a bit of their income through part-time work, whether it's tutoring or working at a cafe on a Sunday, something like that. But yeah, you'll want to start looking at all of your financing now. Co-signers is something that we typically see, not typically, but it's something that students will sometimes encounter issues with after they've completed the entire year and the whole process. They've got their offer, they're ready to go, and then they realize that their co-signer just doesn't have what the bank requires to meet the loan expectations. So have conversations with your family about all of this as early as you can.
Yeah, and I guess Ghislaine has a follow-up question to that, asking, so how much would how much would Alberta allow to have accessible to them?
So I think it comes down to the student specifically, but roughly, I believe it's about 30,000 a year for Alberta students. It might be a little bit higher. We don't really track what students are getting. There's no way for us to know specifically, but roughly it's about 10,000 per year for Ontario. I think about 30 to 40 for Albertans, and then around 20, I think, for BC students. Don't quote me on that. I haven't researched this in a while, so that's just in general.
Yeah, no, I think that's, I'm on the same page with you on that, Amanda. Those numbers sound right. And yeah, I guess the next question from Mona is, what is the acceptance rate for a competitive GPA?
We don't really speak to rates, so I can't really talk about a rate, but a competitive GPA for the graduate entry program starts at about 80%. GPAs are calculated differently depending on the school. So some schools will look at solely a bachelor's, some will take a master's into consideration, and then they might do a cumulative calculation on all years of your degree, or there might be a weighted or cumulative calculation on the final 3 years. So it's really university specific, but in general, 80 or above is what we would consider competitive. And then there's a few outliers like UWA, Monash, where you need a little bit stronger, about an 85 or above to be more competitive.
Perfect. Thank you, Amanda, for answering a lot of those questions.
No worries.
We've got a question from someone in the chat. Anyone else in here from Edmonton? Ghislaine, to let you know, we have a ton of students that inquire from Edmonton and in general from the Alberta province. And I'm sure if you do end up considering going through OzTREKK and do consider embarking on this journey through OzTREKK, we would love to get you in touch with other students that are coming from that area. We've got Ben from Calgary. We've got Alex from Edmonton. This is great, great news.
It's because it's still a little bit early in the evening for them.
Yeah, that's true. So any other last few questions that anyone might have, anything that you might be considering, please ask away. I'll let this be open for another minute or so. And in the meantime, we've got a question. I know you touched on this earlier, so sorry for the additional question. I just wanted to confirm that assuming you pass the GPA threshold for Sydney, they only rank you on MCAT, which last year the lowest was about 513. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. So sorry, Ashish, I can speak to this.
Please.
Yes. So Sydney changed their way that they assessed a few years ago. And because they removed the interview, it meant that the competitiveness of the MCAT went up a lot. We had, for full transparency, last year we had one 512, and that student was a very late offer because someone had withdrawn or wasn't able to attend. So we got that offer, I think, in December, which is unusual. It's not super common to get offers that late. So there's one 512, and then everyone else was higher than that, 513 and above. The last few years too, we haven't received the amount of offers that we normally do get from Sydney. We're hoping things change and go back to a little bit more of like a normal number. Before the pandemic, we would have 30 to 35 students attend the Sydney program. And it's been a lot lower the last few years. And the admissions changes plus the pandemic really impacted things. So yeah, we're hoping that we'll get a lot more offers this year. Nothing's confirmed. I don't have data or numbers that I can share, but hopefully that the lowest MCAT goes a little bit lower, because I know that a lot of students want to attend that school, and 512 is pretty tough for a lot of students to meet. But it's a apply, and we'll have to see.
Yeah, definitely. It is a little tough, but at the same time, a lot of students always ask about that GPA hurdle, and it's nice to know that you need a 70% average for that. So keep that in mind as well. We have another question. Oh, it's would you guys be able to email this recording? And that's absolutely going to be done. It takes us a couple of hours to process the recording, so we will be sending it first thing tomorrow morning. Okay, any other questions? So I'm going to just revert back to the presentation and let you know that if you do have any questions at all, you can reach out to us at medicine@oztrekk.com. That's our phone number, that's our website link. And if you do go on our website, we have a ton of various different resources, articles, different types of information that you would possibly need, a lot of FAQs that we've answered. In general, I would say the OzTREKK website has a lot of information that you can grasp on when it comes to studying any of the programs in Australia. So if you have any questions at all, sometimes going on that website will give you a little bit of the icing that would help you then have a further conversation with our admissions team. So without further ado, I have one last question. Amazing. Please ask away. And that's for anyone else as well. We have 5 minutes remaining in the session, so please, if there are any other questions, don't hesitate in asking. Sure. Let's get Ghislaine to talk. Ghislaine, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys loud and clear.
Perfect.
Yeah, my last question, sorry about that. But yeah, my last question is just pertaining to seat-wise when it comes down to international students, especially Canadians, because I went through the whole OzTREKK website and I was looking at international seats, and usually there are not that many other than like Queensland and I think it was Sydney. Those were the two that had the most international seats open. So I just want to know how that would work.
Yeah, I can speak about that. Good question. So all of the medical, like the faculties of medicine, have designated domestic seats for their Canadian or for their Australian citizens, and then they also have international seats. And in the international seats, there's typically a mix of North Americans, Indians, people from the UK, everywhere in the world. South America, there's always going to be a mix, but because there's international seats, it doesn't mean that OzTREKK students fill those international seats, but we do come quite close for a majority of the programs. And what might be more valuable, and I can definitely answer more questions about this if we exchange emails, but over the years, we have sent pretty similar numbers of OzTREKK students to each program. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Monash, for example, we typically send about 13. It's been like 13 right on the mark every year for the last, I don't know, probably 4 years. Sydney, like I said, about 30 pre-pandemic. University of Queensland, 50 to 70. It really depends on the year, but those numbers tend to stay pretty similar unless there's some sort of change within the faculty or admissions changes something. But yeah, ultimately, like we have about 170. We'll probably have a little bit more this year that attend medical programs across both high school students and university students. But I can talk to you more by email about specific numbers if you ever want to. Oh, I see you sent your email. Okay, I'll send you an email tomorrow. I hope that helped.
Thanks, Amanda. Ghislaine, did that answer your question? Do you have anything else that you'd like to ask? Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, we're all good on my end now.
Perfect. All right.
All right, thanks you guys.
Okay, and just checking if anyone else has any last question that we have. I'll let this be open for another minute and then we're going to close it off. Okay, seeing as there are none, and if you do have any questions later on, please do not hesitate to reach out. As I mentioned before, these are our contact informations and you can get in touch with us at any time. We'll do our best to respond as soon as possible. So thank you so much for making it out today. I hope this answers a few of your questions. You got some information today about admissions of medical schools in Australia. You learned a little bit about Australia in general, as well as coming home to practice once you're done with that degree. So all in all, I hope that this was an informative session for you. And thank you, Amanda, for being here today to speak with all the students. And I'm sure they found it really informative. And yeah, I'm going to close it off. And thank you so much for being here.
Good night, everyone.